Hi everyone. In this video I would like to share with you some of my thoughts, feelings and experiences with Claire de Lune Lenormand, which I've received about a week or just over a week ago. Claire de Lune, I believe, translates to moonlight in English, and it is also the name of a tune by a late 19th century French composer called Claude Debussy. And that tune is what you can hear in the background. It is a very well-known tune. So Claire de Lune, the moonlight, Lenormand, and the art, the mood, the feel of this deck is very much in line with that. It comes in this beautiful matte tin of a case here, and I so appreciate how everything has been put together for us in such a beautiful and considerate way. That striking red felt at the base of the tin there, because I remember in the past I used to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort hunting tin cans like this and custom make the front with all sorts of artistic decorations to match the aesthetic of the cards. And so I really feel quite grateful that one has been put together like this for us in a really tasteful way. And so here I'm going to focus more on my own personal thoughts, experiences and feelings about this deck in particular, but in a second segment of this video I would like to share with you some thoughts about my feelings and my experience and thoughts about Lenormand design in general. And so just really quickly flip through this. I know you would have seen this already, and so you could see that after I shuffle it a few times, there's a beginning to chip a little bit there, and I kind of almost fully expect that with darker decks. Let me just try to focus here. So dark colored or especially black or borderless cards. I love borderless cards, but I think I've mentioned this before in a different video, that the thing with borderless cards, especially when the color is on the stronger or more solid side, is that chipping is a bit more visible. With borders that are white, the white borders actually I found disguise chipping very well. And so not much I can add to how others have commented on this deck, which is generally, if not exclusively, positive so far that I've seen anyway. For me, it is a combination of good aesthetic, good visual pleasure, and artistic merit, combined with the clarity and crispness of each of the symbols in each of the cards. I also understand that Anna have had some experience with large corporations as an artistic director of, I believe, helping these large corporations with their advertisement. And so my own experience with artistic people in the advertising industry is that they're highly skilled with keeping to briefs or business briefs that most of the time has nothing to do with anything artistic. In this case, I believe it is very apparent that her fidelity to the brief, that is the Lenormand system and the Lenormand symbolism, is very clear. The fidelity of her art to the need of the symbols, or what is the Lenormand symbol, is very high. And so like for here, in a lot of black and white Lenormand decks that I have seen so far, often it's very difficult to see which side of the cloud is cloudy and which side of the cloud is now the less cloudy part, because of the reversal of the negative space. It is very hard to see. Here she managed to convey a very clear mood of the cloud being this way, and over there the cloud is clearing. You don't have any question in terms of whether that black side is now the darker side of the cloud, or whether that black side of the cloud now is the lighter side of the cloud because we're working with negative space at the moment. She managed to do it in such a way where it's very clear to me, at least, that that's the cloudy side and that's the clear night sky. And I absolutely love that. I also love how in what feels initially as a fully jam-packed visually speaking card, the tooth path is clear. The thing that is most important, that matters the most in the crossroad cards, are the two paths, and that two paths are extremely clear. You see that straight away before your eyes wander around everywhere. Those two are extremely clear. I mean, what else can you say? It's so clear and yet so different at the same time. Most people, or I suppose most of us, I don't know, but it is often perhaps thought of that there's only so much you can do artistically with a fish or with a key. To me, the symbols in Lenormand have a lot to do not with the depth of it like in tarot, but the breadth of it. And our skills as a Lenormand reader is not in the digging deep of each layers of symbols within each card, but it is in our ability to have increasingly nuanced interpretation that is the breadth of the symbol instead of the depth of it. And so in order to facilitate the more and more delicate nuancing of that breadth of meanings of a particular symbol, in my opinion, the clarity of a symbol is so much more important than artistic merit, which forces the crowding of symbols, the convolution of images within a card, which doesn't add anything to the nature of Lenormand symbols and the nature of Lenormand readings. So these two cards initially came like so. Made a comment about the aesthetic sort of smoothness of it, and so Anna added these two cards, so now we can do so or so, and I like that. I love the profile more than the frontal, but I do use the frontal sometimes. Oh, this is just the cover card, so that's the back. I have just really quick comments about these two cards. I would have probably preferred these two cards to be a bit more just a simple anchor maybe here. It's a minor quibble, but I would have preferred it in an ideal world to just have an anchor. And here when I first saw this, my eyes went straight away to the apple, but in an instant, within a split second, I knew that was the mice card. I love the mouse there. I think it's really cute. But in an ideal world, I would have preferred my eyes to go straight to the mouse instead of the apple. These two cards, I have some comments on those. It's probably a bit more significant. If there's any two cards that I can comment on and say the rest of the deck is exactly perfect and I agree with everyone else, so I have nothing else to add. I have to add with regards to some thoughts about these two cards. The first one is a scythe. I read the scythe not only as harvest but also as quick, pain, cut, accident, surgery, swiftness of time, swiftness of action, etc. And I feel that in this particular card, the idea or the direction or the leaning of the scythe towards the harvesting interpretation is very much put forward. And the way I read the scythe and the way I see this card, my first impression is that that particular interpretation of the card dominate this particular depiction of the card, and I would have preferred it perhaps to have not as crowded a wheat around the scythe and perhaps just a scythe and maybe a couple of stems of wheat or something, leaving the space empty for me to explore the variety of nuances and within the breadth of interpretation of the scythe as my intuition allow. This I feel a little constricted. Intuitively, I felt almost immediately guided towards the harvest as the interpretation of the symbol. Here the garden feels really private, although I can argue that this could be a particular section of a public garden. But the immediate mood with the gates and with all these vegetation here is that of a private garden, very homely. It's a place I immediately feel I would have loved to retreat to in my hermit mode. The way I read the garden is very much within the context of the 1700s, 1800s Europe at the time, whenever this particular system became popular first became popular in that garden is a public space. It's a symbol of the community. It's a space out there instead of the space in here. It's a space where people of respectable backgrounds can meet without their chaperones, without public scrutiny, because it is the world out there instead of the hidden world in here. So it impacted directly in the sort of personal internal space, private space and public space sense that I gather from this particular card. A garden for me is a symbol of the public space, the community, society, and not so much a private home, intimate one. But again, it's only one card of a whole deck, so I find that easy to surmount. However, if I have a choice, I would have preferred to get a more public feel of a garden. It's not so much that I can't remember that a garden is a public space and just look at this image as a trigger of that idea. But as I've mentioned before, I feel very strongly that Lenormand, the way I understand Lenormand, and I think I'm quite correct in my understanding of it, is that you can actually use blank cards and simply write the word letter on it, and you can use it. You can take a blank card and use the word garden, and that would be your deck. And so instead of reading letter or garden, we then have pictures, so that the pictures serve as a shortcut or a shorthand for the word, for the symbol. Pictures say 1,000 words, they say. And so when the picture, for me personally, when a picture failed to be a shorthand, when the picture takes longer to decipher than simply reading the word letter, letter, then for me it defeats the purpose. And so I feel very strongly that the nature of Lenormand, unlike tarot, is very much like tea leaf reading, like charm casting, that a cross is a cross is a cross is a cross, as have been said many times before. And I used the term visual hygiene in my other video talking about my thoughts on designs of Lenormand cards in another video. I'll link that below. By a simple act of re-angling the cross, in this case, it is pictured as being looked from a perspective that sits way above the cross, as well as adding the simple source of light, the simple lines up here. And suddenly, it assisted us as a reader, in exploring a more nuanced interpretation in terms of the breadth of the symbol that is the cross. Breadth and not depth is a theme that I encounter with the Lenormand symbols again and again, in comparison, in contrast, or to that of tarot. And so crowding the symbol here with multitudes of other figures, to me, doesn't add any value in terms of the efficiency of the Lenormand system. It's a bit like having a knife to cut little grapes for your salad and having a knife to cut a big chicken, and wanting your little knife to also be able to cut the large chicken. You then modify that knife to be larger, and so that it is good to cut chicken, but when you return to wanting to cut grapes, it's really hard because it's cumbersome, because it's big. And of course, the choice is ours as to whether we want to have a medium-sized knife to cut both large chickens with, I'm sorry to my vegetarian and vegan friends, I do apologize, I can't think of anything else at the moment. A medium-sized knife to cut both the large chicken or turkey with for Christmas or Thanksgiving, as well as to cut your tiny grapes when you're making salad, for example. It's entirely up to you, or up to me, of course, whether I prefer to have two knives. One is large to cut the large turkey with, and one is small to cut little fruits with, or little round grapes with. I'm simply commenting that when one knife is created with a particular purpose in mind, like this deck or system is created with a particular purpose in mind, that we're denying ourselves that function, I suppose, in morphing this into something else could serve some purpose. But for those other purposes which are served very well with the system, I feel that we might be denying that function, if that makes sense. In any case, that has been my thoughts